All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
So, Phil, we've got a few things kind of all over the map today, but I want to talk about some recent developments. Just on June 3rd, a panel for the 11th Circuit, which is a different circuit than the one we're in, which is the 8th Circuit, or a lot of your members are in the 7th Circuit. Panel for the 11th Circuit ruled in a case called American Alliance for Equal Rights versus Fearless Fund Management. Basically that a contest that Fearless Fund was running was likely to substantially violate what's called Section 1981, 42 USC 1981, which prohibits private parties from racial discrimination contracts. So this is a case in the DE&I realm. A nonprofit membership group had standing, according to the court, to file suit on behalf of members who intended to but did not apply for the grant contest because they were excluded by the program's terms. The contest constituted a contract under Section 1981 and, quote, erects an absolute bar to non-Black applicants and thus fails to qualify for any remedial program exception that might apply, end quote. The contest was not, quote, expressive conduct, end quote, protected by the First Amendment. And so the importance of this case is it does mark another victory for those who are opposed or who challenge DE&I efforts in the workplace and more broadly. The group that brought the claim, it's called like I said, the Alliance. It's dedicated to ending racial classification and racial preferences in America. And this group also backed the Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard College, in which in that case, the Supreme Court last year held that certain race-conscious admissions policies in higher education were unconstitutional, as well as many highly publicized Section 1981 cases. So again, this is just another reminder, as I've stressed numerous times on the program, Phil, that if you are going to go down the DE&I route as a business, you need to do it very carefully. You need to make sure that you are not including people to the exclusion of other people. And the case is really, again, a good reminder of that.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more of a slippery slope. And to me, it does appear intentions versus the reality of what's happening, right? So we have good intentions to try and be an inclusive workplace, but by doing that, we're creating exclusion unintentionally. And we're not considering everyone when we make the effort to be inclusive is really what it starts to break down. And that starts to be a really slippery slope with all the right intentions, wrong outcomes.
Yeah, in other words, Phil, it ain't easy.
It ain't easy. There you go. You know, if it was easy, Burt, they wouldn't need somebody like you, right?
That's right.
Yeah, they turn to guys like me for the easy work. All right. What else you got there, Mr. Attorney from Arizona?
Talking about guys like you, Phil, I want to move to the next topic, which says that which deals with older employees are thriving more than their younger colleagues.
Now, wait a minute. That doesn't even sound like good intentions, bad outcomes. That sounds like a direct attack on my age.
But Phil, I mean, you have more seniority in the workplace than I do by a few years, and according to this study, that makes you more satisfied in the workplace than younger colleagues.
Well, satisfaction comes from within, Burt. I think this is something that we wake up with a mindset, with an attitude. I can look at people who are dissatisfied, and they are dissatisfied all over the place, not just at work.
They are. That is for
yes.
sure. Nick, I sent you a chart this morning from Bloomberg. The source was Gallup. And what's interesting is that only 31% of workers younger than 35 said they were thriving at work last year. And that's down from 35% the previous year. In contrast, 36% of workers 35 and older said they're thriving. That's an increase of 1 percentage point from the previous year. And this 5 percentage point gap between the age groups is the biggest since at least 2009. Now, one thing that really surprised me, Phil, about this chart is, first of all, we're dealing with 31% and 36% who say they're thriving at work. That means that 2/3 of people surveyed in this 100,000 person survey are not thriving at work. I think both of those numbers are really darn low and really kind of disappointing. So I kind of took that away from the study here. But I think that the according to the article, and this is the point of it, is that according to the chief scientist of workplace management and well-being at Gallup, the group that conducted the poll, he said that we've seen increases in negative emotions globally for young people, including loneliness. Young remote workers report more loneliness. They're starting to feel more distant from their employers. And that basically, the epidemic of isolation is as harmful as smoking.
Oh, wow. That's a strong statement. But I mean, there is an element of if that balance between working from home, you're in isolation, you don't get out, you think it's what's best for you. But as humans, we are intended to be social, right? I mean, we choose that as a natural way of life and being social. When work isn't social, then you are going to experience loneliness. I also want to comment on your thoughts about, that means 70% of the workforce is not thriving. That's not unusual in a Gallup survey to see engaged versus actively disengaged or unengaged or quietly quitting, all the things you and I have talked about over the last 270 something episodes of this program.
283, Phil.
283. Thank you for that correction. Remember, I'm on the much older side of this survey. And I know you didn't say 35 is old. You just said older than 34 in this case.
You're wise.
Yes, thank you. But it's an interesting poll. I think people have to be social. And I know our HR community and business leaders struggle to find a way to create that active workplace that is included when people are working from home. I struggle with how do you do that with someone who works away that you want to include, but they simply just don't work near or with the rest of the work group.
Yeah, when you look at that chart again, what stood out to me the most was not necessarily the gap between those above 35 and below 35. I sort of looked at it and said, good God, that means that 65 to 70% of the workforce doesn't think they're thriving at work. And so that to me is just a sad statement, and I think it's reflective of larger societal issues these days. But we're working hard, Phil, to try to bring engagement to the workplace and try to maybe get a little bit of fun in the workplace. And on that note, and this will be a really good transition into our guest today, into Justin's topic. I just wanted to share one other story with you that's in the news, and this was in the news yesterday. And we've talked about Department of Labor audits before, and you know me, I'm a zealous advocate for my clients, but part of being a zealous advocate is knowing how to work with the governmental agencies and do what's right by your client and how to get through a Department of Labor audit. This one, Phil, would fall into the category of probably not how to handle a Department of Labor audit. Just going to suggest that to our listeners that this would probably not be the best strategy. But there's a Connecticut restaurant group and its leaders who were accused of ordering its workers to lie to the Department of Labor during a wage and hour investigation. And not only that, apparently they threatened to kill an ex-worker because that ex-worker helped the Department of Labor during the investigation.
Wait a minute. So the employer threatened to kill?
Yes, the owners of the company that were being audited, they owned two restaurants up in Connecticut, and they were the subject of a Department of Labor audit. They first ordered people to lie to the Department of Labor investigators, and then they basically threatened to kill one of the employees, now an ex-employee, for speaking truthfully with the Department of Labor investigators. And so now they're facing additional scrutiny, not only from the Department of Labor, but my hunch is that the Department of Justice may be looking into this as well. And like I said, probably not the best strategy for trying to get through a Department of Labor audit. There's just
I gotta
something
believe
about
that
it.
Ogletree would have taken slightly a different approach and said, you know what, let's just sit back. We'll build a good strategy. We'll get you through this, and we're going to reset from wherever we end up when we're done. But we're not going to go out. We're not going to out cause someone any purposeful harm.
I can't quite put my finger on it, but something just seems a little bit off about threatening one of the employees that if they don't lie to the investigator and if they speak truthfully, that you're going to kill the employee. It just doesn't seem right.
I don't know. Maybe you watched The Sopranos or something back in the day, but that was a strategy that seemed to work really good for Tony.
Yep. Well, since we're on the topic of death, Phil, I mean, maybe that is a good transition over to Justin today.
Yeah, absolutely. Burt, thank you for that.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link, aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.